Dillon Gabriel was ranked as the 20th best quarterback in the 2019 college football recruiting class, so where are the 19 quarterbacks ranked higher than him now? Well, to start, just in front of him at number 19 is Jaden Johnson, coming out of Memphis, Tennessee, who committed to play for Southern Miss. And he never played at all there, transferring to Missouri State, where he was very bad, and then transferred to Prairie View A&M. And sadly, in his last 2 years of college football there, he was just overall never that good, throwing more interceptions than touchdowns in his career. And coming in at 18 is Davis Beville, coming out of Greenville, South Carolina, who committed to play for Pittsburgh. And he just never really got an opportunity in his 3 years at Pitt, transferring to Oklahoma in 2022. And he also just never really did much in his 2 years with the Sooners, transferring to South Carolina in 2024, where he was also just a backup quarterback and is now currently working as a franchise owner. And at number 17 is Zach Calzada, coming out of Buford, Georgia, who committed to play for Texas A&M. And he actually got to start in 2021 for the Aggies, where he was solid before transferring to Auburn, where he didn't play in 2022, and then transferring to Incarnate Word. And in his 2 years at Incarnate Word, he was flat out dominant, being named the Southland Player of the Year and an All-American. So following that, in 2025, he decided to transfer to Kentucky, where he'd be their starting quarterback, but has been extremely bad. And coming in at 16 is Gunnar Cruz, coming out of Queen Creek, Arizona, who committed to play for Washington State. And he was really only ever a backup quarterback at Washington State, transferring to Arizona, where he got to see a little bit of playing time in 2021, but was overall had a very underwhelming college career. And cracking into the top 15 is Brendan Clark, coming out of Virginia, who committed to play for Notre Dame. And in his 2 years with the Fighting Irish, he was also just very underwhelming, mostly just being a backup quarterback, transferring to play for Old Dominion in 2021. And in his 1 year of college football at Old Dominion, he was also extremely disappointing. And at number 14 is Cam Jones, standing at 6'7", 255 pounds, coming out of Lexington, Kentucky. And I said that because he committed to play quarterback before transitioning to play offensive line, as Cam Jones completely transitioned in college, standing at 6'8", 330 pounds, and currently just transferred to play for Jacksonville State, where he's been starting on their offensive line. And coming in at 13 is Jacob Clark, coming out of Rockwall, Texas, who committed to play for Minnesota. And he just never really got to play in his 1 year with the Golden Gophers, transferring to Missouri State. And he's played 4 years of college football at Missouri State, actually becoming a pretty solid starter for them in 2025. And at number 12 is Brian Maurer, coming out of Osceola, Florida, who committed to play for Tennessee. And he got to see playing time in his first 2 years with the Volunteers, but was extremely bad, transferring to play for Stephen F. Austin in 2022. And he was a solid quarterback there, but was just kind of underwhelming, retiring from football in 2024, and is now currently working as a roofing and solar sales specialist. And coming in at number 11 is Ty Evans, coming out of Maumont, Colorado, who committed to play for NC State. And he was a complete bust, never playing at all in his 2 seasons with the Wolfpack before transferring to Texas State, where he also never threw a pass. And now he's currently working as a television news producer and the Houston wide receiver director and quarterback specialist. And cracking into the top 10 is Grant Gunnell, coming out of Houston, Texas, who committed to play for Arizona. And he actually immediately got to play, becoming a pretty good quarterback in his first 2 years with the Wildcats before transferring to North Texas. And in his 1 year at UNT, he basically didn't get to play at all, transferring to play for Sam Houston State in 2023. And sadly, after transferring away from Arizona, he was just a complete bust, never throwing another touchdown. And coming in at number 9 is Paul Tyson, coming out of Trussville, Alabama, who committed to play for Alabama. And he was just extremely underwhelming in his 3 years with the Crimson Tide, never throwing a single touchdown there, and transferring to play for Arizona State in 2022. And sadly, after not playing at all for Arizona State, he transferred to Clemson, where he never played college football again. And coming in at 8 is Cade McNamara, coming out of Reno, Nevada, who committed to play for Michigan. And with the Michigan Wolverines, he waited his turn, but actually got to take over as a starter there a little bit in 2021. And he was a solid quarterback, but got replaced by J.J. McCarthy, so he decided to transfer to play for Iowa in 2022. And in his 2 years of college football with the Iowa Hawkeyes, he was extremely bad, transferring to play for East Tennessee State in 2025. And as their starter this season, he's also been extremely disappointing, throwing 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. And at number 7 is Hank Bachmeier, coming out of Marietta, California, who committed to play for Boise State. And he played 4 years of college football at Boise State, actually getting to take over as their starter in 2021 and being a solid quarterback. And after that, in 2023, he decided to transfer to Louisiana Tech, where he was extremely underwhelming, and then transferred to play for Wake Forest in 2023. And in his 6th year of college football at Wake Forest, he was also just very underwhelming, going undrafted in 2025, and is now currently playing for the BC Lions of the CFL. And coming in at 6 is Cale Millen, coming out of Washington, who committed to play for Oregon. And sadly, he just never got to play at all for the Ducks, transferring to Northern Arizona, where he was extremely underwhelming. And after that, he decided to transfer to play for the Yukon Huskies in 2023, where he also just never really played. And cracking into the top 5 is Dylan Morris, coming out of Graham, Washington, who committed to play for the Washington Huskies. And he actually did get to start a little bit in his 5 seasons with Washington before deciding to transfer to play for James Madison in 2024. And he only threw 1 pass in his entire season at JMU, but is now currently working for the University of Alabama as their assistant running backs coach. And coming in at 4 is Talia Tagovailoa, coming out of Alabaster, Alabama, who committed to play for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And in his 1 year playing along alongside his brother. He just never really got an opportunity transferring to play for Maryland in 2020. And in his 4 years of college football with the Terrapins, he actually became an extremely good quarterback there, being named the Polynesian College Football Player of the Year and being a 2-time second-team All-Big Ten selection. Sadly, though, after that, he never made it to the NFL and is now currently playing in the Indoor Football League. And cracking into the top 3 is Graham Mertz, coming out of Mission, Kansas, who committed to play for Wisconsin. And in his 4 years of college football at Wisconsin, he was good but just wasn't amazing, transferring to play for the Florida Gators in 2023. And in his 2 years of college football with the Florida Gators, he was a good quarterback but just wasn't amazing, going to be picked in the 6th round of the 2025 NFL Draft by the Houston Texans, where he's yet to play at all in the NFL. And coming in at 2 is Ryan Helinski, coming out of Orange, California, who committed to play for South Carolina. And he actually immediately got to play, becoming a solid quarterback in his first 2 years with South Carolina before transferring to Northwestern in 2021. And in his 4 years of college football with the Northwestern Wildcats, he was just overall extremely bad. It is now currently working as an insurance agent. And finally, at number 1 is Spencer Rattler, coming out of Phoenix, Arizona, who committed to play for Oklahoma. And he got to take over as the Sooners starter in 2020, actually being extremely good there, and was the Heisman frontrunner in 2021. That was until Spencer Rattler got replaced by Caleb Williams, transferring to South Carolina, where he was actually a pretty solid quarterback there for 2 years. And as a result of that, he'd be picked in the 5th round of the 2024 NFL Draft by the New Orleans Saints, where despite having really bad players around him, he's become a pretty solid quarterback for them.